again, Fast fans. Craig Lieberman back with you. For this week, we're covering the Mongo truck from Fast 5. Officially dubbed the heist truck, it was yet another creation from Dennis McCarthy's brilliant picture car team, and this thing was purpose-built to wreak havoc. By Fast 5, of course, all semblances of the street racing culture in these movies had pretty much been cast aside in favor of heist movies, and that's pretty much the recipe they've been following ever since. As was the tradition with Hollywood's picture car industry, tuner cars were cast aside in favor of big old V8 muscle cars and trucks. Because we Americans love them there big block Chevys, small block Fords, and pick-em-up truck. The result, Universal stopped building show cars for these movies and started building all the cars pretty much as stunt cars right from the start. In other words, they would build these cars with whatever stunts they had planned for them in mind. The build plan for these cars basically followed the action sequences that were written into the script. So if it needed to do jumps, they would build a car that could handle jumps, that sort of thing. In Fast 5, there was a gag where they were going to hijack and offload cars from a moving train. So what kind of vehicle would they have to produce in order to do that gag? Since no production vehicle could do anything like this, it was decided to build this vehicle basically from scratch, like a Frankenstein of sorts, because of these requirements. They started with an old Oshkosh HEMTT, which stands for a Heavy Expanded Mobility Tactical Truck. Sounds cool, right? In other words, a vehicle that will flatten Antifa protesters, crush cop cars, and pretty much make a road where there is no road. The Oshkosh cab was sourced from a Marine Corps surplus auction, and they put another $80,000 in supporting components into the build. Now, this vehicle needed to be big enough to carry a car on its back. It also needed a deck height that matched that of the train. It had to work on dirt roads, it had to work on pavement, it had to have serious horsepower, and it had to be able to handle some of the jumps. Pretty significant jumps, in fact. Filmed in Arizona, this sequence with the heist truck takes us down a speeding train on an adjacent dirt road. Since the dirt road wasn't going to be a flat, smooth surface, this thing would need to be rugged, and I mean rugged. Add in the consideration that it would jump a berm or two or maybe more, it would need to be nearly indestructible. That meant custom suspension, among other things. They started by building a 22-foot long frame using 3x6 quarter-inch rectangular steel tubing that served as the base of the chassis. The Oshkosh cab would be mounted to this frame, then surrounded by a tubular exoskeleton, which was not only easier than installing a cage on the inside of the cab, it gave Mongo a more sinister look. The engine is quite an interesting story. So in this particular truck, the engine behind the cab is actually a plastic replica of a GM Ramjet 502 cubic inch big block V8, all plastic. The actual engine is mounted down lower in the chassis for better weight distribution when the truck goes off jump, so that the truck will stay level or blend predictably, and not nose first or not tail first. Behind the cab, of course, is an 18-foot long sheet metal platform with cable winches for pulling cars off the train and onto the platform, as we see in the movie. Mongo was built with a custom monster truck style suspension, the heart of which is a set of huge 4-link setups using Fox Racing coilovers attached to a Dana 60 axle in the front and a Dana 70 out back. Overall, this gives Mongo suspension 12 inches of travel up front and about 20 inches out back. 46-inch Mickey Thompson Baja claws are wrapped around a set of 19.5-inch custom-made wheels just for this application. And although this thing looks like a 4-wheel drive, it's not. There's just a mock diff cover on the front axle to give Mongo the appearance of a 4-wheel drive. It was actually rear-wheel drive. If you look closely, you can see that steering is handled by a hydraulic ram because of the vehicle's weight and dimensions. This thing weighed all of 9,000 pounds, and if you've ever driven one of these Oshkosh trucks, you know how much you'll feel the weight of the thing. A total of 10 of these trucks were produced. With Corey Eubanks behind the wheel, this actual truck pulled off jumps reaching about 25 feet high and 75 feet long. It survived. Somehow it survived each of the jumps, both in the rehearsal and in the actual final movie, and successfully drove away from the stunts with minimal damage. The finish sequence was amazing, and although I detail this entire scene in another video, let me just touch upon it again. This scene was actually filmed in multiple locations, part of it in California, part of it in Atlanta, and the train sequence was filmed in Arizona. Universal actually purchased a real train and a section of unused tracks on which this train could run. The sequence all in cost them $25 million to produce on a $125 million total movie budget. This scene was a mix of CG and practical shots. To get the truck to crash into the train, the traditional cable and pulleys gag was used. Essentially, the truck is attached to a cable and pulleys that go out and pull the truck forward this way. And this is somewhat similar to how fighter jets are launched off of an aircraft carrier, except that catapults on an aircraft carrier are powered by a steam piston. So a little bit different, but similar principle. Anyway, Mongo hits the train at about 60 miles per hour, which was brave considering that the stunt team really didn't know exactly what would happen. In fact, the impact was more severe than they anticipated, and it was only by the slimmest of margins that the train wasn't actually derailed. And if you look at this shot, it looks like that train car almost goes over, but somehow it comes back. And that was absolutely real. I'll tell you this though, if the train had derailed, it would have been a disaster. They would have had to stop filming, bring in huge cranes to right the locomotive to put it back up on the track. And that's no easy job considering that a locomotive weighs about the same as a 787 airliner on takeoff, which is about 450,000 pounds or 225 tons or so. Putting a locomotive back on the tracks would have taken several super heavy lift cranes to be transported all the way out to the Arizona desert, assuming they could get on those roads and get over there to lift the thing up. Once again, Universal's production team did their homework and with a little luck averted what would have been a significant delay in filming. So what happened to these trucks after the movie? Details are a bit sketchy at this point. Allegedly, at least 2 were sold and repurposed for the movie Death Race 3, which was released in 2013, about 2 years after Fast 5's release. If you didn't see Death Race 3, you're excused because it went straight to DVD and made about $8.5 million on a $6.5 million budget. Last I heard, a couple of these trucks were still in Universal's possession. The others might have been scavenged for parts. And I can't say for sure because Universal has essentially embargoed the release of any information on these vehicles. So if you know of someone who has purchased one of these trucks, drop me a message in the comments below, okay? That's a wrap for this video, everybody. I'll be back next week, so if you're enjoying my content, please consider subscribing. Take care, everybody.